Now let's look at some geographic patterns regarding gender, race, and ethnicity in the United States and Indiana. Here's a chart that shows the places that have the highest sex ratios at the top, which are essentially more males than females, and at the bottom are the cities that have a higher number of females compared to males. So it's where we have the lowest sex ratios. And a lot of what's going on here can be explained with the map, which we do right here. And so here we see a general pattern. You can really see in the American southeast, down there along in the states of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas. In those particular areas, we see a much higher number of females compared to males. What's going on there is in African American communities, definitely you notice a pattern where females outlive males for a variety of reasons, but it's definitely plays itself out in African American communities, and so it makes sense where we see a large number of African Americans, we're going to then see that sex ratio more skewed to the females. But if we look at the north and the west, you can see definitely more blue on the map, and what that means is those are where you're going to see more males than females. So lots of what's going on there is migration. Historically, in the last 50 to 100 years, more migrations happen in the western part of the United States than the eastern part. And so who's more likely to migrate historically? Males. So that helps to explain the blue patterns in the western part of the United States. Also, you got some other things going on. You got military bases that you find out in the west that attract more males. You also have mining. So mining, which is seen as being a kind of a heavy machinery, having to move around a lot of stuff. You have to be big and strong. So you see mining areas, particularly there in the North Dakota area, where it's a new area where it's growing because of what they call fracking, a particular mining activity. And now we zoom into Indiana. We can see, for the most part, the state is completely pink or red. So that means we have more females than males, and that's very common. If we look at, in particular, you can see right in the middle of Indiana, Marion County, where Indianapolis is, you can see that really sticks out in all of that rows that surrounds it. So that kind of goes along with what I just said regarding African Americans. And so even though we're not in the American Southeast, we still see that pattern ring true. Other things going on is we see a lot of universities and colleges scattered all throughout Indiana. It's got a ton of them, a lot of small ones. And on average, more females actually go to college than males. So that might also explain why we see more red, in particular on the map. Some of the blue counties, if you notice, kind of in the more of the southern and eastern part, the southern and western part of the map, there along the Illinois border, that's where we have a lot of mining, in particular coal. It's where a lot of Indiana's coal comes from. So Indiana has a lot of cheap coal, and it comes from that particular area of the state. And so this kind of all builds on some patterns we see nationwide when we zoom in into God's country here in Indiana. We're looking at minorities, which is going to take into account Asians, blacks, African Americans, Hispanics, amongst other groups as well, just essentially non-white. We can see a general pattern in which in the northern part of the state you're going to see more minorities, but as you go farther south, you get to the bottom here, you see less. With the exceptions being, for example, where you see towns or cities, like for example Bloomington, Columbus, you got surrounding the areas that surround Louisville, areas that surround Evansville. So other than those, you can definitely see a particular pattern. So some of the most rural counties in the entire state, some of the ones that are the farthest from a city or a town, are those white counties, literally and figuratively, that stick out on this map. And so those are some of the most rural counties in Indiana. You can really see how there's a particular trend here. Minorities are more likely to be found in urban areas, but the only exception being you do see Hispanics and Latinos in some rural areas, but other than that, for the most part, minorities are more likely to be found in urban and suburban areas. And here we just have a map that just essentially visualizes a lot of the patterns that were identified in the text as far as where we find African Americans, as far as their densities and concentrations. Every county in Indiana has African Americans, and even further, they represent an increasing percentage of the population. So you're seeing this from the 2000 census, you're definitely seeing an increase. Further, they're typically a little bit younger than the rest of the average population. There's two counties that dominate. The two counties that are highlighted right here. Lake County, which is where Gary is located among other cities, very close to Chicago, and then in the middle, Indianapolis and Marion County. So together, these two counties account for 62% of the entirety of African Americans in Indiana, so overwhelmingly dominate. And then we also see that each of these counties both have 25% of their population African American or higher. So you can see how they, at least in both of these counties, are 1/4 of the population. Now, why does this matter? This is going to definitely play itself out when we look at the elections. This is going to play itself out when we look at different economic patterns. And so, this stuff is all makes sense, and it's all builds and builds and builds throughout the semester. And then when we zoom into Indianapolis, the metropolitan Indianapolis, we can see downtown and just to the north. So the near north side, the near northwest side, the near northeast side, the east side of Indianapolis there in that middle county, Marion County, is where you see a large number of African Americans. And some other places you can kind of see going towards Anderson. So going to the northeast from downtown, you also see large numbers of African Americans, but definitely in the majority of the rest of the suburbs, you do not. You really notice that when you look on the south side, but also on the north and northwest side. And here we have the density of Asians, which are most likely to be concentrated there in urban areas along the coast, with exceptions as far as places not along the coast being typically academic areas, areas with research, areas with universities, colleges. So the highest number of Asians are going to be found in Indianapolis and Hamilton County. But the two counties with the highest percentage of their population being Asian both have the universities. So we have the top one there, Tippecanoe County, which is where Purdue University is, and the bottom one in Monroe County, where Indiana University is. And so this makes sense given what I just said regarding national patterns. In the case of Asians, they're more dispersed than the African American population was. African American population was definitely clustered there in the near north side of Indianapolis, where the Asians are more spread out. And you can see this particular pattern where you see on the north side, Hamilton County, Carmel, Westfield, Fishers, Zionsville, and Boone County, all throughout Hendricks County. If you look at Marion County, the south side of Marion County has a large population from Burma, one particular country. And we'll talk all about that particular pattern throughout this semester. But we've got this large cluster of Asians that have populated that particular area. Further, in Johnson County, you have a large number of Sikhs. They're from a particular area in South Central Asia, in which they've had a couple migrations, in which they're now clustering on the near south side. So essentially we have a dispersed pattern, but you don't really see large numbers like we saw there in the Marion County area. If they are, they're more spread out. But definitely around IUPUI's campus, you definitely will see a larger number of Asians, and once again, that makes sense given research and universities and the trends we've already noted. Now, as far as density of Hispanics, much more dispersed. You find them all throughout the country, but these you see more likely to be in urban and rural areas. So that rural areas is often for labor purposes. Besides Marion County and Indianapolis, which has a large number of Hispanics, 4 notable counties we can see shaded here. So the first one with the F inside it, that is Clinton County, where Frankfort, Indiana is. Frankfort, Indiana, 25% of its population is Hispanic, which is very, very, very high. Also, you have just to the north of it, where the L is, where Logansport, the city of Logansport in the county of Cass, has a large number, about 20% of its population is in Logansport is Hispanic. What's going on there is both of those counties have a large number of manufacturing or food production, food manufacturing, which Indiana does a lot of. Pork processing, for example. Up in the top, we see the E in Elkhart County, which is where Elkhart is. That's the RV industry, and so that's where they manufacture a large number of recreational vehicles. Over in the top left, Lake County, which has the highest overall percentage of Latinos, is where Gary's found, and there you're going to see a large number of Latinos because Chicago attracts a large number of Latinos, and Chicago is one of the largest areas for non-native Mexicans to migrate to. So that's obviously being Chicagoland, it makes sense, along with a lot of manufacturing and production that occurs up there. And in Metro Indy, very dispersed, but definitely see more of a cluster in Marion County. In particular, although it doesn't really show it on this particular map that shows school corporations, it's what the geography is inside counties, is on the western side, especially of Indianapolis. You see the large cluster of Latinos, and you can see this on Washington Street in downtown Indianapolis with the stores with Spanish language signage. So obviously caters to the local Hispanic population. In terms of the Native Americans, you see a very dispersed pattern as well, but definitely more rural, but also more west. In terms of where Native Americans are found in Indiana, there's really no specific pattern. It's follows just like anything. Where there's more people, there's more Native Americans. There's two in particular counties, Miami County and Wabash County, up here in north central Indiana, where you do see a little bit more, a higher percentage of the overall population found there, and that's about 0.5% of the population in both of those counties.